Picture this. You are standing on top of a wall. Not just any wall, the most legendary defensive structure ever built by human hands. A wall that has held for over 1,000 years. A wall that has looked down at Huns, Avars, Arabs, Bulgars, Vikings, and Crusaders and buried every single one of them. Behind you, a city of marble and gold and 2 millennia of civilization. In front of you, an army so massive, so loud, so incomprehensibly vast that the campfires stretch to the horizon like a second sky made of fire. And leading that army? A 21-year-old. This is the story of how one obsessive, brilliant, psychologically scarred young man used cannon fire, naval genius, and sheer force of will to do what every empire before him had failed to do for 700 years, and why on a Tuesday morning in May, a civilization that had survived the fall of Rome simply ceased to exist. To understand why Constantinople had to fall in 1453, you need to understand what it meant to a young man who had already been sultan, and then had that sultanate ripped away from him. Mehmed II was 12 years old the first time he sat on the Ottoman throne. His father, Murad II, had abdicated, retired, done with empire building, and immediately the world tested the boy. The Crusaders came. Hungary marched. The Janissaries rioted in the capital because a 12-year-old wasn't what they'd signed up for. Murad came out of retirement, took the throne back, and Mehmed watched. He watched his father fix everything he couldn't. He watched senior advisors roll their eyes at him. He watched his own humiliation become a story people told. That does something to a person. That kind of public inadequacy, earned or not, it either breaks you or it becomes you. For Mehmed, it became fuel. When Murad died in 1451 and Mehmed took the throne for the second time, he was 19, and he had one obsession. Not Persia, not the Balkans, not naval supremacy in the Aegean. Constantinople. The Romans called it the Queen of Cities, the center of the world, the living proof that the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, had outlasted everything. It had survived Attila, survived the plague that killed a third of Europe, survived 4 centuries of Islamic expansion that had swallowed everything around it. And for the Ottomans, who now controlled virtually everything except that city, it was a splinter in the eye, a reminder that their empire was built around a city they didn't own. But here's what made Mehmed's obsession more dangerous than his predecessors. He didn't just want Constantinople, he'd studied it. He'd read the Greek histories, the Roman siege records. He spoke Greek. He knew the walls. He knew where every previous assault had failed. And more critically, why? He wasn't coming with an army. He was coming with an answer. In 1452, a Hungarian engineer named Urban walked into Constantinople and made the Byzantine emperor an offer. He could build a cannon. Not a cannon like anyone had ever seen. A cannon that could, by his own claim, blast through the walls of Babylon itself. Constantine XI, the last emperor of Byzantium, listened carefully, then told him he didn't have the money. Urban walked out of Constantinople and walked directly to Mehmed. Mehmed didn't ask about the budget. He asked, "How big can you make it?" Urban said he could build one 4 times larger than anything that existed. Mehmed said, "Do it." The basilica, as it came to be known, took 3 months to build and required 60 oxen and 200 men just to move it. When they test fired it, the blast was heard from over a mile away. People in the surrounding villages reportedly thought an earthquake had struck. But here's what most history textbooks bury. The basilica wasn't just a weapon. It was psychological warfare. The Theodosian walls had been standing since 413 AD. Every person inside Constantinople had grown up believing those walls were permanent, divine, indestructible. A cannon that could crack them wasn't just military hardware, it was an attack on the Byzantine identity itself. When the siege officially began on April 6th, 1453, the basilica fired its first shot, and a section of the outer wall fell, just like that. 1,000 years of held ground, gone in a single morning. The Byzantines were resourceful. They patched, they reinforced, they worked through the night, but the cannon fired again the next day, and the day after that. This was the siege's brutal mathematics. The Ottomans could destroy faster than the Byzantines could rebuild, and Mehmed knew it. The walls were cracking, but Mehmed had a problem. Constantinople is a peninsula, water on 3 sides, and the one waterway that mattered most, the Golden Horn, was sealed. The Byzantines had stretched a massive iron chain across the entrance, an old trick, a proven trick. It had stopped Ottoman ships before, and without naval access to the Golden Horn, Mehmed couldn't attack from the north. He was fighting with one hand tied behind his back. His admirals tried to force the chain. The Genoese ships inside the horn, fighting for Byzantium, absolutely destroyed them. For a lesser commander, this was a stalemate. For Mehmed, it was a problem to be engineered around. What he ordered next was so audacious, so strategically insane, that when historians first documented it, some of them thought it was an exaggeration. He had his fleet dragged overland, 70 ships, each one weighing hundreds of tons, wooden cradles, greased logs, thousands of men hauling ropes through the night. And while the Byzantines watched the front walls, Mehmed moved a fleet over a hill. By morning, Ottoman ships were inside the Golden Horn. The chain that had protected Constantinople for decades was now completely irrelevant. The defenders, already stretched impossibly thin along miles of wall, now had to cover another front. Constantine XI had maybe 8,000 men to defend 14 miles of fortification. Mehmed had somewhere between 80 and 100,000. The arithmetic of survival was no longer arithmetic. It was prayer. On the night of May 28, 1453, the night before the final assault, something extraordinary happened inside Constantinople. Every person left in the city gathered at Hagia Sophia. Soldiers, civilians, Greek Orthodox, and Roman Catholic Christians who had been in a bitter theological schism for 400 years stood together in the same nave and prayed. They knew what was coming at dawn. And Constantine XI, Emperor of Byzantium, heir to a lineage stretching back to Augustus Caesar himself, addressed them. He told them that a man who fights for his faith, his sovereign, his city, his family, that man does not fear death. Then he asked forgiveness from everyone he had wronged, Senators, generals, palace servants. He went around the room. Then he rode to the walls, and he stayed there. At dawn on May 29th, Mehmed launched the final assault, wave after wave. First, the irregular troops, exhausted on both sides after hours of brutal fighting. Then the Anatolian regulars, harder, more disciplined, pushing through breaches in the outer wall. And then a small door, a door called the Nicopolis. Someone, to this day no one knows who, unlocked. Ottoman soldiers found it, slipped through, and suddenly there were enemy troops inside the walls. The cry went up, "The city is taken! The city is taken!" Constantine heard it. He threw off his imperial regalia, tore the purple from his shoulders, the color that marked him as the descendant of a 1,000-year lineage of Roman emperors. And he charged into the Ottoman surge. On foot, he was never seen again. His body was never definitively identified. The last emperor of Rome simply disappeared into the battle. He refused to survive. There's a reason this story still grips people 500 years later. It's not the cannon, it's not the ships over the hill, it's the human machinery underneath all of it. The humiliated boy who turned obsession into conquest. The emperor who chose to die with his city rather than live in exile. The open door that changed the entire trajectory of Western civilization. History isn't a series of inevitable outcomes. It's a chain of decisions made by flawed, driven, desperate human beings. And one unlocked door can erase a millennium. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand why things happen, not just what happened, then you're already the kind of person who belongs here. Hit subscribe. Every video we make goes deeper than the history you were taught, because the version they gave you left out the most important parts. Mehmed rode into Hagia Sophia on the afternoon of May 29th. He dismounted, picked up a handful of earth, and poured it over his own head. A gesture of humility before God, the man who had just erased an empire, performing an act of smallness. Whether that was genuine piety or geopolitical theater, no one can say for certain. What is certain, the fall of Constantinople sent Greek scholars, artists, and intellectuals fleeing westward, carrying ancient manuscripts, classical knowledge, and the intellectual DNA of the ancient world. Many historians argue that the Byzantine exodus directly accelerated the Renaissance, that the fall of one civilization lit the fuse for the rebirth of another. Mehmed was 21 years old. He went on to reign for 30 more years, conquered more territory than any sultan before him, learned 7 languages, commissioned Renaissance painters to do his portrait. He called himself Kaiser-i Rum, Caesar of Rome, because in his mind, the Roman Empire hadn't ended. It had just changed hands. The story of who was right about that? That's a much longer story.